crunch, bring it back, single leg sweep. Let me teach you how to wrestle. Okay, let me teach you how to wrestle.
And we're live. Ian, thank you for joining us.
I am very happy to be here, Gene, as always. How you doing?
Good, doing well.
Good.
All right, first to have some fun, the lightning round. Pin or tech?
Pin.
And why?
Well, it's the ultimate goal of the sport. It ultimately helps your team, whether it's tournament or duel, more than anything else. And it's also the most exciting thing. I've said this before. The most exciting thing in wrestling is when somebody's losing, they're down by 7 or 8 with 20 seconds left, and they just they dig it out and get a throw, or they just work hard for a bar and half or a cradle. Just the fall just is what I find most exciting. Attack a lot of times, unfortunately, is indicative of a lot of difference in ability. It's hard to tech a guy, whether it's 2 elite guys or 2 mid-range guys. It's hard to tech somebody that you're not significantly better than.
That's true. That's true.
It happens with the new rule set, obviously, with the 3s and the 4s. It's a little easier, but I just think a pin for me.
Okay. Confident or mentally tough? I mean, they're both kind of aspects. They're both aspects, but they're similar. Okay, yeah. So why?
Why I prefer it, or why I think it's more important?
So why you think it's more important?
I think you're tough. I think that you're going to have a lot of losses and a lot of bad days if you're going to seriously climb the ladder. If you're going to go from average to good, you're going to have the good guys beat you up. And if you want to go from, state placer to state champ, you're going to have those guys beat you up. And just staying mentally tough, you're going to get through that. You're going to get through the hard weight cuts. You're going to get through, maybe bad things happen, man. You're running a fever the week before. A fever the week before the district tournament. You roll your ankle 2 days before Fargo. It happens, and just the ability to put that aside is difficult.
Yeah,
but,
I agree. Confidence sounds a little bit sexier, but it's like when you really think about it deep down, that's why I look at mentally tough as being more like phase 1 mindset. Confidence is like phase 2. That if you don't have that mental toughness, forget about it. The confidence doesn't really mean that much. All right. Fast or strong? Another tough one.
It's really tough. It's really tough. They're both. I mean, you look at guys that are just really powerful, and then you look at guys that are just explosively fast, and it's impressive on both ends. I would say strength. I would say if you're strong and you can stay in good position, you can handle a deficiency in speed, where if you're just significantly weaker than somebody, hard to execute, man. Hard to win a hand fight, hard to move somebody and get to a leg, hard to turn them, hard to ride them. You know what I mean?
Sure. Would you rather would you rather you or your wrestler to be the favorite or the underdog?
Underdog.
Why?
I think there's a much bigger upside. If you're the favorite, you're supposed to win.
Okay. All right. Technical or athletic?
Technical.
That's the sport, right? That's the name of the game. You got to know how to wrestle. If you don't know how to wrestle, you could be as athletic. It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. And I've had this conversation, especially with youth parents, because the big, strong, mature 12-year-old with the mustache is going to win 95% of matches. The tough 9-year-old who's doing push-ups and sled work and, pull-ups and, cutting weight is going to overwhelm the average other 9-year-olds. But when you get to a higher level, high school, obviously college, senior level, you have to know how to wrestle. Aspin's got some really good takes on that. I've listened to some of his stuff on Instagram. I've heard other people, but I think he expresses it well.
Okay. Last one. Long and lanky or short and jacked?
Short and jacked. Come on.
Yes. Agreed.
Come on. Can't turn on my own kind.
Me too. I agree. That'd be the day I pick long and lanky. No offense to the guys out there who are long and lanky. It's just I'm not, so I got to pull for myself.
100%.
All right. So just having some fun in the beginning. We were talking a little bit before about, obviously, we greatly respect everything you've been doing over the years.
Thank you.
Turning out some great wrestlers, and more importantly than turning out great wrestlers, just great people, really using wrestling as a vehicle to build better people, which is what we're all about. Talk about some of the mental struggles that you've seen with the wrestlers throughout the years, maybe how they've worked through some of this. And, I know I'm asking kind of like multiple questions at once here, but also if there was a specific thing that you think we should be focusing on, maybe more with the wrestlers, what do they need more that we could give them? I'd love to hear your take on that.
Well, I'm going to go off to the side for just a moment.
Sure.
I think the most important thing that they need is not something you can necessarily give them. I think it needs to be developed and instilled, and that's passion. And
Yes.
it's not. So I don't know when you reported it, but you had something with Coach Buxton and Coach Monaco
Yep.
in the past. And, you know, I was on Instagram and I said to one of the kids in the club or whatever, I said, hey, you know, this is Coach Monaco. You know, he basically, you know this and I know this, but a lot of people don't know. I mean, Ernie basically pioneered wrestling clubs. I mean, they had existed. They had existed before the Edge, but not like that. And now there's just so many clubs and there's so many tournaments and there's so many competitions and there's NHSCA and Super 32 and Fargo. And it's a real grind, man. It's a real grind, especially if kids get on that serious bandwagon, 8, 9, 10 years old, where they're traveling a lot and they're missing school and now they're having to make up for stuff. And it's a real long grind from 8 to 18 or 9 to 19 or however you want to look at it. And the kids that aren't passionate, as they get older, they get surpassed. And the kids that are passionate will do those things. I said this last night in practice, that a lot of getting good at wrestling, and this is simply an opinion, is being able to really do just kind of some mundane things well with purpose. And if I can just elaborate in a minute, I'll give you a great example. I was very fortunate. A couple of weeks ago, Trent was coming through town, Trent Hidley, and graciously offered to stop by practice and work with our athletes. So that was, you know, wonderful experience for the kids. And Frank Beasley, who's right up the road, who's doing a great job at George Mason, stopped in also. So they've got a Division I 4-time All-American, you know, guy who just was an inch away from, you know, right there making the Olympic team.
Right.
You know, just an absolute hammer and a super high-level Division I head coach. And we're talking about stance and motion. So I've got 7-year-old, 8, 9-year-old kids in the room. I've got junior high school. I've got high school. So they're doing stance motion. What are they doing? They're down blocking, they're shooting, they're sprawling, they're faking, they're circling, they're moving their feet, they're staying in good position. But what that 7, 8-year-old is doing is the same thing that Trent's doing.
Right.
Trent's still doing his stance motion isn't some elevated form of higher level technique. It's you know, he's doing shots and sprawls. And you know, if you walked into anyone's room, I know you're involved with Penn, or, you know, you walked in NC State's room where I have ties, those guys are doing shots, stance, fakes, down blocks. It's the same thing, but it's got to improve. If your shot as a 9-year-old isn't better when you're 10, and 10-year-old isn't better when you're 12, and junior high school isn't better when you're in high school, you're just going through the motions. You're just doing it to do it. And something that really, I think, struck with my kids, my students, was when we did it, Trent did the entire warm-up with the kids, just like he was just there for practice. You know, I'm hey, hit a shot, right? You know, down block, go into a high crotch, you know, sprawl, come up moving your feet. And he's doing those things, but he's doing it with purpose. And he sees the value in it. And some kids, once they've done it for a few years, they're just, I got it. I know a single leg. I know a high crotch. I know a tilt. Well, you kind of know it, but you don't really know it well. You're not doing it correctly. So I just
all
think
the time under good competition.
100%. And good competition is the indicator. So if you say, oh, that kid's got a good high crotch, that kid's got a good single, he's got a really nice slide by, that to me means it works against good competition. Not that he's drilling it okay in the room, but that he can execute it when he needs to. And that's a lot of work. And as you get to higher levels, the workload gets higher. And that's where passion is really important. It's a hard sport if you're burned out, man. It's a really hard sport. And I've done this for a long time, and I've seen very few kids get really burned out and come back rejuvenated. It's really hard. Once you lose that spark, I think it's hard to recover. It happens, but it's rare.
It is. And yeah, it's really true. I was actually talking to Pat Lugo yesterday. He was a guest on our show, and he was saying how when he's in the Iowa wrestling room, I guess he's been there for the last 8 years, and he said with the Brands brothers, he could just feel the passion just like oozing out of them, like how much they love the sport. And you have to you really do have to love doing those fundamentals, those basics, and doing it well. And then another thing I think of is a YouTube video I saw of John Smith saying that when he was winning world and Olympic championships, he was putting in 20 minutes,
20
a
minutes
day
a day.
on stage. 20 minutes a day
for 6 years.
Yeah, it's like stance in motion. Stance in motion,
Yep.
not even, as basic as it seems, he's practicing his movement. Like he didn't just
100%.
think, hey, I got to take care. A lot of us like to say, I've taken care of this. Check.
Right. But have you really taken care of it?
Right. And even if you could, if you're not growing, you're dying, right? So if you don't continue to do it, you lose your timing, you lose your, now you're out.
100%. And at his peak, he's the best guy in the world, and his motion and his speed and his footwork is clearly elite isn't the right word, because it's clearly better than elite, but the amount of repetition he had to go through to do that is just, it's astronomical. But he had to go through it with passion. He had to go through it with purpose. If he just simply went through the motions and did the exact same amount of time, I don't think you get 6 world titles. You know what I mean? Right. Like, you don't end up with that finished product. And the best guys, they do everything right. And I think what you do is really, I mean, you guys do a lot of things really well, but you preach the comprehensive lifestyle that, you listen, you're going to need to sleep properly, and you're going to need to warm up properly. You're going to need to cool down properly. You're going to need to visualize. You're going to need to have short-term memory, because when you go to Super 32, you go to Fargo, you go to NCAs, you go to the state tournament, one guy wins the bracket. So if your dream is to win, if you're going to Fargo to win, you're going to Super 32 to win, you're going to the high school state tournament to win, only one guy is going to get that. So that means there's a lot of other guys that are going to, you know what I'm saying? They're going to have to recover from that. And, I mentioned Trent before. Hayden was one of those guys that early in his career, maybe everything didn't fall into place, but he would always wrestle back. He's a guy that was third at the state tournament before he won it. He was a guy that was third at Fargo before he won it. He was third at Super 32, and the value of all those matches wrestled back. The guys that go 0-2 get nothing. People are like, oh, we're going to go out there. We're going to go for the experience. If you compete really hard, yeah, there's experience. But if you go 0-2 and get shellacked, I'm sure you gain something, but I don't. The guy that wrestles back for third is just building toughness. He's getting another warm-up routine. He's getting another cool down. He's getting another, just the entire experience. And that's just, so valuable. You know what I mean?
Oh, absolutely. Now, what age should these kids? You've seen a lot of wrestlers through the years, like longitudinally as they've grown up.
Yes.
What age do you think they should be getting into the club, doing camps, wrestling, and what should they be thinking about? Again, another long form question. You could take and spin it however you want. And how can the parents start them off on the right foot, where a lot of the mistakes the parents might make and how they approach it? I'm sure you have a ton. We could probably do a whole show on this.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think it's important that you don't try to force feed it too soon. If they have a passion and they want to go to an extra practice, if they have a passion, they want to go to a camp, I think it's great. You nurture it, you encourage it. I don't think when they're 8, 9, 10, you need to be making them do things. Mm-hmm. I find, honestly, and I've said this to you before and to others, it's competition wears on them way more than practice. You get in the car, dad, mom drive you over, you practice for an hour and a half. It's a tough workout, whatever, you get better, you go home. But when you're on the road for you're traveling 8, 9 hours, and now you're sleeping in a hotel, and it's one of the host hotels. So there's 80 million kids running up and down the hallway. Siblings are bunking in beds together, so no one's getting a great night's sleep. Now you're telling a 9-year-old kid, hey, we're getting up at 6:30 because weigh-ins are at 7:30. You're going to stand in this really long line on, in your underwear. And now the weigh-ins are over and wrestling starts at 10. Oh, wait, you have a bye. Your round's not going to start till 11:30. And you win your match. Oh, okay, we're going to do a round of consies now. So you got about 2 more hours. And those days get really long. In a snapshot, 1 or 2 of them, no, they don't. But if you start doing that all the time when they're young, I think you wear them out a lot. I really do. And some kids have a unique passion. I've met Bill Bassett a couple times. I know his dad, nice people. I don't know him well. I've never worked with him. But you can see the passion in that kid. Zane Rutherford at that age, you could see the absolute passion. When he wasn't the best guy in the room,
Right.
he still wanted to be in the room all the time. And if things didn't go well, fine, I'll come back and go to work tomorrow. But not everyone's like that.
Right.
But the other thing I would add to that is I find a lot of parents have a hard time finding that balance. I see a lot of, hey, I don't want to burn him out. I don't want to push him. I don't want to, I want it to be his call. And that's good. But when they're 10, 11, 12, there's times 13, they just need a kick in the butt. Like if they're supposed to go to practice on a Tuesday and they're sick or they have something else, that's fine. But if it's just like, I really don't feel like it, then it's like, well, you said you were going, you made a commitment to the team. You really should be there. Like, I'm not saying you got to be completely hardcore, but the analogy I would use is if they came home and they were struggling in math or English, and the teacher sends an email or you get a letter or a phone call, and the primary reason the kid is not doing well is effort. They're not doing their homework. They're not trying. Damn well that parent is going to be right on that kid. You're doing this. You're doing that homework. No, and I'm not equating the two, but I think it's okay to realize that very few kids are self-motivated all the time.
Right.
So
getting that balance. That's exactly what you're saying.
Balance is what it is.
Keep speaking about this because this is all gold that's coming out because you see it work both ways and how it has to be 100%. A happy medium. You do have to push and you do have to back off. Keep talking about that.
The balance is it. So everyone's an individual. They always talked about how Gable's greatest strength was that he could, identify how to really push buttons on his guys, and he knew them. He knew their mindset, so he could kind of work with each guy differently. And every kid is different. So there's going to be that 8, 9, 10, 11-year-old Zane Rutherford that wants to do everything. And so you let him, you encourage him. But if they're not constantly wanting to do stuff and you're always forcing it, you're usually going to end up with a really good 11-year-old who's sick of wrestling by high school. And if you don't push periodically, you're going to look back at 15, 16 and be like, I should have done more. I should have done more. I shouldn't have taken that whole summer off. I should have went to the club 2 days a week. I should have went to team camp. I should have done some freestyle tournaments, whatever it is. Not that everyone has to be a year-round lifer, but it's so competitive now. There's so many good kids and so many good clubs and so many avenues for development that if you're not really putting in good quality time through middle school, when you get to high school, it's going to be hard to really catch the upper level guys. And I don't think that was the case 20 years ago. I think the good athlete that had good coaching in their club, in their middle school or their high school room could be really successful nationally because there wasn't thousands and thousands and thousands of people doing clubs.
All the resources.
Constantly. I mean,
clubs,
there's so many
strength clubs, training, mindset, everything. It's nuts.
Everything, nutritionists, everything. And then they're wrestling constantly. It used to be even 25 years ago, and maybe I'm off on the numbers, but you get my gist. There was Fargo for older kids. There was some regional stuff. Younger kids had the bigger events, like Jack Roller stuff, Tulsa Reno. That's been around forever. But there wasn't Worth the Shore, and there wasn't Super 32, and there wasn't NHSCA duels and individuals, and there wasn't the Waterway duels, and there wasn't all these other mega events that are getting thousands of kids. So the ones that are serious and really do want to achieve at a high level have got to put in that body of work. And again, a balance. If you have that super self-motivated kid, that's awesome, but recognize you probably don't because they're the anomaly.
Right. And the goal dictates the behavior, right? So
100%.
What I mean by that is I don't think most parents are under the delusion that their kid's going to be an Olympic champ. I think my sense, the people I speak to, maybe this is just a biased sample, most kids who are trying to be, most parents who are thinking about their kids being good at wrestling, they would like them to ideally be a state champ and wrestle and do well in college, whatever that means. They're not even necessarily thinking they're going to be an NCAA champ, but hey, if wrestling was used to get them into a good college, if they were a state champ, their kid was a D1 wrestler or whatever, they're thrilled. So I think what parents are intuiting is that we can't necessarily, like when I look at like the Soviet books, they didn't start their wrestling training until about 10, 11 years old.
Right.
They're thinking
tumbling,
balance. It's all tumbling, which is still great. But the technique they're thinking is like 10, 11 years old. That's when they start. I think what parents are intuiting, or maybe just myself, we got to start a little bit earlier. If we're trying to get a kid into, if we want the kid to be a state champ, they're going to have to start a little bit earlier. So at what point do I push and when? So I think that's like kind of the nuances there.
Right. And I think you're a lot better off being the supporter and letting me, you, whomever, the high school coach, be the one that's pushing. You can encourage and you can nudge, but if you're always pushing your kid to do stuff, they're going to get to an age where they push back. They're going to get to an age where they don't want to hear it anymore from mom or dad.
Right.
And your point about goals and vision is really succinct, because I'll say that all the time. Like, what's your goal? Like, if you tell me you want to win the state title, okay, then we're going to need to do this. But if you tell me, I want to be top 5 Super 30, I want to play Super 32, I want to place at Fargo, I want to win Fargo, I want to win AHSC, I want to, and now you see the emphasis on the world teams, where you see more and more of the highly elite kids are passing on Fargo, but they're doing U20s and they're doing things like that because the aspirations are higher. And so if you come to me and say, this is it, he's 12, he really wants it. And first of all, does he really want it, or do you really want it? For every parent that tells me he really wants it, and then the kid comes in the room and I can tell the kid doesn't want it. You know what I mean? You can see it.
Yeah, you want it, sir.
If they genuinely, the kid really wants it, then the workload's gotta be equivalent. You can't do, the work to be a state champ and then say, oh, I want to win Fargo, I want to be wrestling at who's number 1 next year. It's so difficult to get to that level that you can't skip steps or cut corners. And again, 25 years ago, there weren't all these resources and avenues to get good. And kids are getting so much better faster. What you see Jax Forrest doing, what you see Blaze doing, when you see Bassett, when you see them beating good college guys, that was an anomaly. People freaked out when Kolot did it. Jimmy Carr made an Olympic team at 16. Right. Now these guys, but they were outliers. You know what I mean? They were very, that was very, Kolot and Carr, they were winning matches at Midlands before they were in college. Now you see high school kids regularly doing that. Right. And it's not because the college guys have gotten worse. It's because the training is so available and so accelerated. And when you concentrate the kids with the resources and the coaching, it's if you're not in that group doing that work, don't expect to beat that group.
Exactly. Which is nuts. For most kids, most of the time, what would be a general trajectory you would give them, like when they should have their first? I know every kid's different, so I know there's no way you could actually say this for everyone, but like around what age should they start wrestling? And should it be start with club, start with rec? Again, of course, it depends on the kid. If a kid has a hard take on doing one or the other, you put him that way, right? Like you said before about the tumbling first, what are some things you would expose a kid to at a very young age? And then at what age do they start competing? Things like that.
I think, 6, 7, 8, start doing some tumbling, start moving in a stance, start learning how to control your body, learn how to sprawl, learn how to do a stand-up, learn good position, but learn it at an introductory level. So some clubs are very higher level, and it's like you do your youth program in your town, and then when you're ready to step it up, you go to a club. Other clubs they have a beginner option. So I'm in Northern Virginia, excuse me. When I was in Pennsylvania for all those many years, we didn't offer a beginner option. Every town, Milton, Lewisburg, Mifflinburg, Shikellamy, all these small towns have their own youth programs that are really good programs and well run. The kids go to that, they enjoy it, they want to be more serious, do a club. But if you're in an area like in Northern Virginia where there's not a lot of middle school wrestling, or I was in North Carolina at NC State. If you look in Raleigh, which is the capital of North Carolina, there's no middle school wrestling. So unless kids, and there's very few youth programs. I mean, there's a few, but it's not like each town, like you're from Jersey, every town in Jersey has a youth program.
Yeah.
That's affiliated with the town. It's not necessarily a club. Each town has their, South Plainfield wrestling.
Right.
You know what I mean? And then the better kids, not necessarily the better kids, the more motivated kids can, join a club for more better partners, different instruction, the ability to wrestle year round, which most youth rec clubs are not going to go year round. Right. But I don't think forcing a kid into a really hardcore environment at a young age with we're going to toughen them up. Yeah. I don't think that tends to work.
It's like the kid, my sense is the kid's competing in practice. They're like, they got to compete. They got to wrestle. It's like, well, they're wrestling live in practice. And then when you go to tournaments, like you said, there's a lot of.
The time is now to take your mindset to the next level with Wrestling Mindset. Make sure you go to our website, wrestlingmindset.com, and sign up for your free trial session today. Don't wait any longer. You want the mental edge right now. When you sign up for the free trial session, you're also going to get a copy of our free ebook, Building the Predator Mindset. This book has helped thousands of people build confidence, relax under pressure, get motivated, and build mental toughness in wrestling, school, and life. Make sure you sign up for your free trial session today.
It feels different for a kid, and they might not even be mentally and emotionally ready for that. And I don't think that's necessarily like making them soft. It's just they might not be ready for that, actually.
Right. And not competing too soon and too often. Like when youth parents tell me, oh, he wrestled 100 and whatever. He wrestled 110 matches last year. You know, he's 9, 10 years old. Okay, so you want to keep that up. He's going to have 1,000 matches in by high school. Let's just say, and everybody's different, but wrestling's hard. Division I wrestling's really hard. Senior level wrestling's hard. So let's say you have 10, 11 years of just really good, passionate, hard,
right,
grinding work in you. Do you want to use it from 7 to 17? Wouldn't you rather use it from 12 to 22?
Right.
And obviously everybody is different. There are people that can just grind it out, but it's a balance, and competing too much too often. And the worst thing is putting the emphasis on results. That is the absolute kiss of death. If we won, everything's great. And if we lost, everything's terrible. We show up, we beat a bunch of kids that were much better than, we wrestle poorly, but win anyway. We get a medal, everything's great. We go to a tough tournament, we go 2-2, we don't place, but we wrestle 4 really good matches. We execute, we score on our feet against a really good kid. There's another kid who's really good on top, and we're able to, seal off, get to our feet and not get ridden. And we're sitting there as a parent saying, oh, well, he lost these matches. But no, he performed well. That's the goal. Like, if you're going to step up your level, you're going to lose at something before you win it. You're not going to go, unless you're the absolute freaks and phenoms, you don't show up at the state tournament and just win it. You don't show up at Super 32 and just win it. You don't show up at Fargo and just win it. You don't just show up at U20s and win it. Like, you're going to have to go to those events and lose and take the perspective of, how did I wrestle? How did I compete? How did I execute? Am I doing the things in the room in matches correctly? Am I looking to score when I should,
Right.
And I just think trying to base your evaluation of the performance shouldn't be based on who gets their hand raised. I think is a huge mistake with parents. Not all parents. There's some parents that are great. There's some parents that are just like, hey, you did your best, good job. But there's others that are just like, and I get it. You flew across the country and you took 2 days off of work, and the hotels were $180 a night, and you're paying $6 for water at the concession stand. And little Jimmy just went out there and just got train wrecked by 2 bigger, better, more mature kids. I get it. You're not happy, but exploding on your kid in the hallway, and it's not going to help.
I'm laughing, thinking back some of our conversations we've had over the years that my brother and I still talk about to this day. Talk about how a lot of times you'll see the parents, they'll use the collective we when something's going well, but then it's he's doing it. Talk about that. They'll love to hear that.
It is, and I'm not trying to diss any parents. Obviously, there's
but
billions of great wrestling parents, but you do hear a lot of we. We are working hard. We are getting so much better on our feet. We won Reno. We won the youth states. But as soon as there's a problem, we got down to weight. We got our weight down. Yeah, we got down to weight. It was tough, but we did it. There's a lot of it was tough, but we did it. But then as soon as there's something that's not good, he quit. Oh, he got pinned. Oh, he should have beat that kid and he didn't even try. It really is one of those things, and I don't think they even realize they're doing it. But the best wrestling parents I've ever seen are just super, super supportive. The Hidleys, the Rutherfords, the Hoffman, like those parents of those kids were firm, and they were nurturing, and they were encouraging. And if their kids were lazy, they got on them. but they didn't try to micromanage the coaching aspect. They didn't try to impact the kid's development in that way. Well, I think he needs to do this, or we should be doing this, or he's not doing this, or I get this all the time. I'll have a parent show me a video. He got caught in this move. Can you show him so it doesn't happen again? Really, show him so he doesn't get taken down with a single leg again. He's 9. He's going to get taken down with a single leg 1,000 times.
Right.
Or he couldn't finish this shot. Can you show him how to finish it? Well, we've worked on this a million times. We get head inside. We want to get up to our feet and back on the ankle. If we can't get back on the ankle, we got to run corner and shelf and try to get side. We can't get caught in a shin whizzer. We don't want to get Jones. You know what I mean? Like we know our progression, but it's not always going to work. And watch the NCAA finals, and there's usually a shutout.
Right.
Watch the semifinals and the finals. Mathematically, there's almost a shutout. So you've got a guy that's in the NCAA semis or finals. He's as elite and good as it gets. And he couldn't, in 7 minutes, find a takedown, get a turn, get an escape. He knows how to finish a shot.
Really well.
He knows that 22-year-old that just lost in the finals, he knows how to finish a high crotch. He didn't want to get stuck in a crackdown and get stalemate 3 times. Oh. But just sometimes your execution is not going to happen.
And speak also, the other thing I remember us talking about, sometimes the unreasonable expectations, where it's like the parents, they want their kid to be, national champ wrestler, straight A's in school. Mm-hmm. And talk about that a little bit. And then meanwhile, it's like, hey, it's like out, not to put the parent down, but it's like, hey, how are you doing? What are you ranked in the country in your job?
Right.
Lift your shirt. Let's see your 6-pack. What does your bank account look like?
Right. And it comes down to also, not everyone has all those intangibles at a certain level. Like there's guys that work their whole life and they're just really, really dedicated and just don't qualify for the NCAA tournament. They're really good. They were great youth. They won state titles in high school and they got Division I scholarships. And, maybe they qualify for NCAAs and don't place. There's a ton of really, really, really good guys. So when someone says, I want to be an Olympic champ, I want to be a world champ, it's like, that's a really, really, really hard thing to do, even if you do everything right.
Right.
Look at the Olympic trials this year. Some of those brackets were unbelievable. So you're looking at some of the best guys on the planet, certainly the best guys in our country. A lot of them didn't place in this tournament. Right. So when you say he's 12 years old, I want him to win that. And then you start force feeding everything. Well, we got to do wrestling mindset, and we got to go to the trainer, and we got to go to the club, and we got to go run. And, he was doing hill runs the other night, and this and that. And it's like, you can't force feed it. It's got to be somewhat organic. It's got to develop over time. And you can see who's got those intangibles. You can see who's got it. And sometimes it's not going to happen. It's just not. And sometimes it's physically not going to happen. If you're not, let's face it, if you're just not a great athlete, you can make yourself stronger. You can do plyos. There's a lot you can do. You can do flexibility. You can do a lot of strengthening. But if you're just really not a good athlete, wrestling at a really high level is hard.
Yeah, that's something. Yeah, absolutely.
So maybe your kid's not cut out for it. And then your point about everything else, it's like, oh, well, he's got to make straight A's and he's got to be valedictorian. And, I want him on the baseball team also. And I know that means we're not going to be able to do freestyle. And, we need to, he's on the debate team. So we're going to have to miss, club on Tuesdays. That's when they have their whatever. If you're going to put them in 80 million things, it's going to be really, I don't think that they need to wrestle year round. But what I do think, and I do firmly believe, in season, you shouldn't be pulling away from wrestling for other things if you're serious. And if it's the springtime and you want to play baseball, if it's the fall and you're playing football, I think that's great. If you enjoy it, you should do it. But if you're saying I'm really serious about wrestling and it's the middle of wrestling season and you're like, oh, I got to miss, I've got a lesson for whatever. It's like, no, you shouldn't reschedule that around practice. Like, I get that you want to take, your club lacrosse practice or whatever, but you're in wrestling season. And if you're going to miss, that's okay. But don't come back to me and tell me how serious you are.
Right. And especially, like you said, when we're talking about you're in season and we said before about a commitment, you're making a commitment to a team. Right. Yes. Might be a little bit different. I mean, you should definitely still be at your club practices because that's where you're going to really get better. But you're when you're on a team and you're committing to everyone else on the team, that's not a good lesson overall. Because now what does that look like when you apply that to your future career? Right? How do you apply that to your marriage? You got to show up, right? It's not easy. You don't always want to be there, but you got to be there when you're required to be there. So that's an important life lesson.
Consistency wins. Consistency more than anything else. Trent made a really good point about that. I believe his words were something along the lines of the sport rewards consistency. If you're trying to hack your way to the top, we're going to go try this for a week, and then we're going to try that for a week, and we heard this guy in the town over has got a really good kid, so we're going to go over there and chase that partner. And, the second something goes wrong, we got to find a different club or, whatever. It's like you just have to stay the course. You just have to find your groove and do the work. If you're always looking for different ways to avoid the work, then it's going to manifest in a poor performance down the road. It's just, there's no way to avoid it. The guys that are really consistent in their preparation, in their mindset work, in their cutting their weight properly, getting their rest, it's what you do all the time that matters. I mean, if you work really hard all the time and you have one bad day, it's not going to kill you. But if you goof off all the time and then you put in one great week, I don't think that's going to help you. Like if you don't practice very hard and you don't try very hard, and then all of a sudden something lights a fire under you because, the postseason's coming up in 2 weeks. I got to pick it up now. That's the best thing. I'll have people call me. Hey, we got to get ready for the postseason. We were thinking about coming over. I'm like, it's next week.
Yeah, exactly.
This conversation should have taken place 9 months ago.
This should have been handled a while ago.
This should have been handled 9 months ago. So again, it's just doing the work and doing it consistently. And going back to what we talked about a few minutes ago, just being mentally tough. Like, I get that there's days you don't want to go to practice. I totally get it. Everyone feels that way. Everyone has a day they don't feel like going to practice. You're tired. You had an argument with your parents. You had an argument with your girlfriend. Did poorly on a big test that you thought you did well on. Whatever it is, and you just don't feel like going. And then you get in there and it's like, okay, you're here. Are you going to make the most? Are you going to go through the motions and waste the 90 minutes? Or are you going to just get down to business, put it out of your mind, work really, really hard, and just, it's just, like people use the analogies, putting money in the bank. Ken Lane Sr., I don't know if you know the Lane boys, both wrestled at Lehigh, and both were PA state champs and club members of mine, and great kids. And their dad was high school state champ, wrestled Division I. He was coach of the high school team that won a Pennsylvania state title. So just a really knowledgeable family. And he calls it stacking the paper. Everything you do, a lesson with you, it's one thin sheet of paper. And then you come to club practice, it's one thin sheet of paper. And then you go home and you get a good meal, you get a good night's sleep, you do your schoolwork. So that's taken care of in the morning. And you wake up refreshed, feeling good. It's another stack of paper. And then at the end of time, you got a big stack of paper.
Right. That's a good way of looking at it, because each time it's like it's a win. Like you have to look at it. When I did this,
and it's so small. It's one snapshot. It's one day of doing leg attacks, or one day of focusing on parts of your offense, or it's 45 minutes of short offense. Whatever it is, you're not getting that much better at that practice because you've done it over and over. You've been doing a single leg since you were 9, and now you're 17. It's the same single leg. You're still trying to lock your hands. You're still trying to get your head up and your hips in, but willing to do it with purpose, not just go through the motions, it's essential, because there's so many people that are not only putting in their time, they're putting in quality time. 30 years ago, people weren't putting in that much time. If you were putting in a lot of time, you were doing camps, you were doing stuff, you were wrestling, a lot of off-season stuff, you were really making huge gains. Huge. It's the same thing with the middle school red shirt. So you go back 20 years, nobody was holding back. Once in a while, people were voluntarily holding back, but it wasn't a thing. Now it's the number of and I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm certainly not saying it's a bad thing. It's a decision for every kid and every family, but so many kids are reclassifying now. You know what I'm saying? They're repeating 8th grade, or they're going to a prep school and they just finished 9th grade and now they're at Summer Blair and they're 9th grade again, whatever. So many kids are doing it. You're not gaining that much of an advantage. You're gaining an advantage over the average kid that doesn't care that much, but you're going to beat him anyway.
Right.
But the other kids that are trying to make a U20, the other kids are trying to make a U20 team, the other kids that are trying to win Fargo, the other kids that are trying to win Super 32 or NHSCA, or trying to win, we talk a lot about winning a state, and there's a lot of variance there. Winning a small school division in a state that's not a wrestling state is a lot different than winning Jersey or Pennsylvania or Illinois or Michigan or California or New York. And I'm not trying to slight any states that I didn't name, but all of us that are in this game know that certain states are much harder, much.
Yeah.
So again, if you're trying to reach that goal, the other guys that are chasing that goal, they're reclassifying also.
Right.
They're going to clubs also. They have good coaching also. They have mindset work also. So 30 years ago, 25 years ago, there was some of that going on, but not a lot. When you guys started, there was nothing like you guys on the market. And correct me if I'm wrong, I think you guys, I'm throwing this out of my head, 15 years ago maybe. When did you guys?
I started doing it in 2008. We formalized in like 2012.
Okay, so that's exactly, we're in 2024. So 12 years, you know what I'm saying. You said 2008.
Yep.
Yeah, so 16 years ago.
Yep.
You guys were pioneering that, just like we talked about before with Ernie and Edge. That was the first real organized club that I think really hit people's radars, where you started seeing all these really talented guys coming out and like, oh, they're going to Edge. Oh, they're going to Edge. And then, there became this massive proliferation through Jersey and PA primarily, but you saw a lot of it, when Bournemouth started overtime, then you started seeing, not that was the first club in the Midwest, but then I think you started seeing more people like Izzy started doing their things, and, they just started popping up everywhere. Coach Waller was doing All-American, 30 years ago in Western PA, but it wasn't like it is now. There wasn't 20 other clubs within an hour drive.
Right. No, it's crazy.
Those guys you're competing against, when you say, hey, I want to win, I want to make the world team. You know what I mean? I want to be number one in the country. All the guys that you're competing against at that level are doing those things we talked about, and they're doing them well. So if all you're doing is putting your time in, that might be okay locally, and that might even be okay on a state level, depending on what state you're in.
And how much
talent that's not going to get it done on any kind of national
level. No, that's, people don't realize just how I guess that brings it full circle right there. If this is a table, we're looking full circle. It's like, goes back to the passion where you said about doing the little things right, and finding a passion, like wanting to do those little things right, finding the joy in doing those little things right, because it is real hard.
Yeah. Your legs are killing you. You're cutting weight, taking 100 shots or whatever. And now you got to go get on elliptical, or you got to go spar with somebody or whatever it is, because you're still 4 over. You got to have some passion to say, okay, I want to do this. I'm going to get through this. And that's where mental toughness comes in also. Like, hey, I got to do it.
Oh yeah.
And some people have it, but you can't create it. So I've said this to our kids before, and I think you and I have had this. We've had so many conversations if we haven't discussed this. So every kid's dad at some point, and coaches too, and I'm guilty of it, some form of toughen up. You got to get tougher. You went out there, you melted in the third period. Gene, you got to toughen up. Toughen up. You can't just do it. It can't happen overnight. It's just like saying, hey, look, you're too short. You need to grow 3 inches by next year. Or, hey, you're not fast enough. You need to be way faster now. Like, there's things you can do, but you're not going to be Burrows. You know what I mean? So just saying to a kid, you got to get tough. You got to build that. And I think one of the things you guys teach that I think is a huge, huge part of it is short-term memory. Like, something bad is going to happen. You're going to be up by 6 and get stuck, or you're just going to get a really bad draw. That one kid that just got your number where you really thought you were going to be the 2 and he was going to be the 1, but now you end up 2 and 3, whatever. Now you got to see him in the semis, and just, you got to just say, okay, this is what it is. Wrestle your best. And if it doesn't go your way, it's time to wrestle the consolations, but you can't feel sorry for yourself. You can't have a pity party in the hallway.
Right.
You can have 5 minutes to sulk. You can have 5 minutes to sulk.
Yeah.
And if the match went well, you can have 5 minutes to enjoy it, but no one really cares about the last match.
Right.
At all.
Right. Right. Exactly. I mean, wrestling doesn't really care about your feelings, doesn't care about whether you won or whether you lost. Wrestling just keeps going on. It just keeps going on. So you have to, you bounce back quick. The faster you can reset yourself. Yeah.
Every event is a snapshot. Every event is a snapshot. So whoever won name it, whoever won Jersey States, whoever won NHSCA, whoever won Fargo. Once that event's over, it's great and it helps them with their national ranking and all those other things. But it is over. No one really cares the next day. I mean, yeah, you're happy you won and you're happy for your kid. But if the event's on a Saturday night, by Monday, I'm not like, yeah, we did it, we won. It's like it's done, man.
Right.
And if it didn't go well, it's like, okay, it didn't go well. Like,
right. It's crazy that
you
as we approach, you're right. This is a great point, Ian, because as we approach it, we feel like it's the most important thing in the world. And not that it is the most important thing, but we do have to make it really important. Otherwise, we're not going to train for it. But then on the other hand, it's not the end of the world, because as soon as it's over, that's basically it. It's more or less forgotten. And now it's moving on to the next, and everyone cares about what's going to be the next thing. I mean, I saw it a lot at the Olympic trials this year. You see the wrestlers looking for autographs from the wrestlers that are coming out, and you have people like Jameel Kelly just walking by, and it's like, these kids should be asking for his autographs. Like, do you know who he is? And then what about this guy who just walked by? It's like, you just let a whole bunch of Olympians walk right by you, and these people who still yet haven't even qualified. You're getting there because people
you're enamored, right? You're enamored with Jax Forrest, but Jameel with his Olympic silver.
Yeah.
Don't know who he is.
Right.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. We don't do a good job of passing on the history or passing on. Kids are very aware of who their generation is.
Right.
We talked about, you mentioned Coach Smith before, and obviously with his retirement now. But there's a lot of kids, they might know the name, but they've never sat down and watched these videos because they grew up in the era of Kale. And now there's going to be another era of kids who've grown up with David and Jordan and Zane and Kyle and that crowd.
Right.
And that's who they're enamored with. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
And there's some kids that are students of the sport and they watch a lot of video and they know the history, but not a ton. Not a ton.
It's like that with a lot of sports. That's why you have all where you see it's like, the LeBron, Michael Jordan thing. It's people who watch, the people who grow up, who fell in love with basketball now. It's like they're pulling for LeBron. These are circles that we're not in, but you see this every now and then pop up. But it's just like that. That this is, and I feel like the celebrities are really the ones who are really in college right now, because like Flow Wrestling is basically the spot where people are going for. It's like the ESPN of wrestling, right?
Yes.
So it's so for them, it's like, even when someone's removed from competition, even a year or two, even if they won a national championship, they're looking at the guys who are competing right now in college.
100%.
At least that's my sense that I'm seeing. So it's
I agree with you 100%. I agree with you 100%. And what's interesting is that the group that's phasing out, like the group that's going to start retiring now and getting into coaching, the kids today, some of them won't even really know them. You know what I mean? They'll know the mega superstars. They're going to know David Taylor, Jordan Burroughs, but they're not going to know the guy that placed third twice or something like that. And that guy's an absolute stud.
Yeah. Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Even just go back. I mean, I can name anybody. Okay, great example, because I know you're tied to Penn, and I saw the news about Matt Valenti taking over next year. Most kids today wouldn't know who Matt Valenti is. Most high school kids, they wouldn't know he was a two-time NCAA champ for Penn. He was two-time, right?
Two-time.
Right. That's what I'm saying. So if you said how many kids know him, I think you take high school kids today, more of them know Jax Forrest than him. More of them know they know Mitchell Messenbrink more than him. They know, and I'm just throwing out random names of guys that are in college now that are popular, that are obviously very, very good.
Sure.
So that's who they're emulating, and that's who they're watching.
Hey, I can even see it with myself, where I think about, I knew the guys who were state champ wrestlers when I first started wrestling, but like a few years before, just like within 5 years, the state champs before those people, like I knew the guys like Logan, Esposito, Hahn, Pritzloff, but the guys who were like just a little bit before them in the early 90s, they were state champs too. They're multiple time state champs. I don't really know those people. And it's like, yeah, kind of whatever. And it's like, no. Those guys were actually beating those people before they came in. So it's funny.
It is. It really is. And if you're in the wrestling community long enough, you realize that there's so many talented, good people, coaches that people don't really know. Like I know so many good clubs, like just being on that club circuit and going to NHSCA and dueling these guys and being in corners at Super 32 or whatever. There's just some really good that people have no idea who they are.
Right.
You know what I mean? They really don't. I mean, there's just so many. I was talking to somebody about freestyle Greco, and I said something about Pinnacle the other day. They're like, "Oh, what's that?" I'm like, I don't know the numbers, but they probably put out more Olympians than any other club. I mean, and they've done a great job out there forever. And there's so many other clubs like that, and there's the ones that just everyone knows. And I was fortunate. You mentioned Flo. Like, we got a lot of, they'd have Hayden on Flo or Trent or Gavin Hall, whoever, and that helps build your profile of your club, obviously, because that's where people see it.
Right.
But for a lot of there's so many unknowns out there that are so good. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
You can be good anywhere if you want to be. You know what I mean? Like, you can come out of a non-wrestling state. That's the other thing. Well, we got to go up to PA more. We got to move. It's people moving their whole lives. It's like, you can get good anywhere. It helps to be in a power state, obviously, but I don't think it's essential.
Right. But that passion is essential. Bringing it all the way back.
Yeah, the passion is what's going to drive you to do those hard things well. I mean,
right.
Self-motivation only goes so far, man. Self-motivation, there's very few, even grown-ups. I mean, how many people are always 100% self-motivated? I'm not. Who's 100% self-motivated all the time?
Yeah.
Nobody. So, but that's where discipline kicks in, where it's like, don't feel like doing it, but I'm going to do it. Okay, exactly. So now you showed up, and that's now where the passion's going to come in. The discipline's going to make you. The discipline, you're going to do what you have to do because it's important. The passion is you're going to do it really well.
Right, exactly. And if you don't have that discipline, you really don't have a darn thing in this world. At very least, it's not going to be. I remember Coach Sachi telling us that at Rutgers, saying at the time, 65-year-old ex-Marine, he told us that if you don't have discipline, you don't have a darn thing in this world. And he's absolutely right. So it's, that's really, and that's ultimately where you got to get the kid to be doing it, wanting it on his own, and for him taking that personal responsibility versus just doing it because dad's telling me to do that. That only lasts so long. And like you said, that could breed resentment.
100%. And again, the passion is the kid that's going to want to do those things and go to those tournaments and go to those practices. Like, if it's always, horse and a carrot where, well, if you win, we're going to buy you a new headgear, or, if we go to this tournament, we're going to go out for ice cream later. Like, if you're trying to negotiate to get your kid to do stuff, like, you're better off inspiring them to do it. You're better off building that passion that they want to do it. When they want to do it, you can see it. You've been in enough wrestling rooms. You can see who wants to be there.
Yep.
You can see who's hard drilling, and you can see who's not. It's clear who's just trying to survive the 90 minutes or 2 hours and go home.
Right.
And it's not the best guys.
Exactly. That's for a time, it might work if you reward a kid here and there, but I would make that your main mode of motivation, because there's that, man, I should really know this as a psychology person, that I think it's the overcompensation effect or something like that, where, once, if someone's doing something and they love to do it, and then you start like paying them to do it, then they don't want to do it anymore. Then it becomes more like a job. It's not identical to that with young kids, but you could condition them a little bit at first. You give them a little bit of reward, but I would make that your main thing, because now they're always expecting something. And then once that's removed, they don't want to do it. So you got to be careful with that one. Proceed with caution.
Proceed with caution. Same thing we talked about before, balance. No one to encourage them, no one to nudge them. Be support. Your job is way more getting them registered, getting them to the tournament, making sure the singlets are clean, making sure they have their headgear. Like, that's your job. It's my job, or whoever's job, to explain why they're not finishing their single leg properly, or my job to get on them because maybe they weren't moving their feet, or maybe because they were lazy on bottom. But if they come off the mat and you've got the phone in your hand and you're pointing at the phone, look at this, he's riding you for 45 seconds here. Look at this, he was all over your legs, that there's no sprawl here. And they don't want to hear it, man. They don't want to hear it. And frankly, they're not listening.
Right. And you're jeopardizing your relationship with your kid.
You're jeopardizing, they don't want to be coached by their parents. It's very rare that you see a father-son head coach dynamic and there's not a little bit of tension and friction. Right. And usually there's someone else that's there for their kid. Like I mentioned Ken Lane before, he was super helpful with my club for years. I mean, like I said, the guy was very knowledgeable. He's a state championship coach in Pennsylvania. He wasn't trying to tell me how to coach his kids. He was coaching other kids. He was helping that. When it came to his kids, he was hands off. You know what I mean? And that's a huge lesson. It really is.
Right. And if they are struggling with that parent-child relationship, you know how to contact us with Wrestling Mindset.
100%. 100%.
We deal with a lot of those. No, more importantly, thank you very much, Ian. This was awesome. Where can people find more about you? How can they contact you? How can they reach out?
If anybody's in Northern Virginia or coming through, it's legendwrestling.org, I believe is our webpage. Like I said, if anyone's in the area and wants to come in for a workout or check us out, you're more than welcome to. We'll be doing some camps and stuff this summer with the guys from NC State and George Mason. So yeah, if anyone's in the area, look us up. If not, basically everyone should be looking you up because you guys, I've just recently, and this is true, I've had 4 of my students join with you, right? Kate, Rhea,
Yes.
Braxton, and Pete. Yeah, 4, and they've all had positive results, and the ones who've been doing it the longest are making the most gains because they're consistent. And I can do some of what you do, but we've talked about this. I mean, I can encourage a good pre-match ritual. You know that's important. And I can say, hey, you got to have short-term memory. And I can say, hey, listen, you need to get a good cool down in, or you need to recover properly, or, hey, be confident in this situation, visualize. I can give them those talking points, but I'm there to teach wrestling. I'm not going to break down a 90-minute lesson and a workbook and go through it step by step like a trained professional like you guys are. So the mental aspect is huge. Everyone's good at the highest levels. Like everyone in college knows how to shoot a single leg. They know how to do a stand-up. They know how to do a tilt. Everyone on the senior level knows how to do a gut wrench or a leg lace. So why are some guys really standouts? Because at that level, everyone's working hard, but they're really mentally tough. I continue to say this. I think Zane's mental toughness, it was very much on display at the Last Chance qualifier, but he's just got it. It's not anything I think that he learned, or I'm sure he developed it over time, and his parents were instrumental in that. But he's got the mental toughness, and he's a senior world champion. He's got the mental toughness of a world champion. He's got it. Everybody doesn't just have that.
Right. Absolutely. They got it.
But you can develop it. I'm not saying you can develop to a world championship level because that's not. And people that try to sell people a bag of goods, send him to my club, he'll be a state champ by next year. Send him to my club, and he's going to win Fargo. Like I hear coaches make promises like you shouldn't do that because the child might not be capable of that. Right? They just might not be, because one person is going to win that bracket of 160 people, and 159 people aren't going to win that bracket. And of the 159 that don't win it, I bet 30 of them really, really trained hard and thought they were going to win, or at least thought they were going to place.
Right.
So, again, mental toughness.
Exactly. And that's why we're using it for the big picture, right? Always using wrestling as that vehicle to build better people. And that's what it's all about. So thanks again, Ian. I really appreciate it.
This was awesome.
Again soon. Yes.
Anytime, Gene. Appreciate you.
All right. Take care.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.